Good evening, everybody. Breaking news this afternoon. Finance Minister Bill Morneau is announcing the date of the next federal budget, and it's March 19th. If the government doesn't fall between now and then, fingers crossed, and there's no real money to speak of. Ms. Wilson-Raybould is actually the headliner today, and she waited 2 hours to address her former peers, the MPs, the cabinet of Mr. Justin Trudeau. And here's the CBC reporting. Quote, Wilson-Raybould waited more than 2 hours for permission to attend Tuesday's cabinet meeting, sources. Ministers debated the optics of letting their former colleague address them after quitting cabinet. Jody Wilson-Raybould spent more than 2 hours waiting outside the cabinet room on Tuesday while her former colleagues hotly debated her request to address them about the SNC Lavalin affair. Multiple sources tell the CBC News that some cabinet ministers were concerned about the optics of her unprecedented request to attend a meeting over the inner circle just a week after she'd quit cabinet. Wilson-Raybould had been at the center of a burgeoning scandal over allegations she felt pressured last fall by unnamed people inside the Prime Minister's office to intervene in the criminal prosecution of SNC Lavalin. The allegations, first reported by Globe and Mail 2 weeks ago, have rocked the government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and led Monday to the resignation of the Prime Minister's longtime friend and senior advisor, Gerald Butts, who continued to deny the claim that he or anyone else in his office pressured Wilson-Raybould over the SNC Lavalin. Quote, but the fact is this accusation exists, Butts wrote in his resignation letter. My reputation is my responsibility, and that is for me to defend. The sources tell CBC that Wilson-Raybould contacted the Prime Minister the next morning just before the cabinet meeting asking to attend. The Prime Minister took her request to cabinet, sparking a vigorous debate. The sources say Liberal Minister Paddy Hadjid was among those arguing for giving Wilson-Raybould permission to speak to cabinet. The Prime Minister finally agreed. Scroll down. Trudeau's answers so far have done nothing to quell the controversy. He first declared the allegations were false, but conceded a day later that there had been discussions in the fall with Wilson-Raybould about SNC Lavalin's efforts to obtain a deferred prosecution agreement, DPA, which would allow the Montreal firm to pay a fine but avoid a criminal trial. A week into the affair, the Prime Minister revealed that he had met with Wilson-Raybould on September 17, almost 2 weeks after federal prosecutors told SNC Lavalin it would not be invited to negotiate a DPA, and that she asked him if he was going to direct her to make a specific decision in the case. So there certainly is a lot of smoke in the analogy where there's smoke, there's fire, and a lot of question dodging. This is question period. Mr. Scheer goes after Mr. Trudeau for the whole question period. Every time he has a question, it's in the vein of SNC Lavalin, basically asking when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau knew about meetings his inner circle were having with and being lobbied by SNC Lavalin. And the response is often, we looked at this through a jobs lens, jobs, and we are trying to protect jobs. So they are deflecting like crazy and trying to explain what they did, even though we don't know exactly what they did, because he won't ungag the one person who can fill in the details, right? So he's speaking on her behalf because he has privilege and he won't waive the privilege. And so I'm going to show you a couple of excerpts. This is the first question in English. I believe Mr. Scheer asks. The time index and the link are in the description. You can listen to the whole thing for yourself, but you will hear Justin Trudeau repeat himself ad nauseum. He repeats himself a lot. He blames Stephen Harper, and he will blame Stephen Harper in this answer as well. It's Stephen Harper's fault. Yes, you've been the Prime Minister for 3 years, sir. It's definitely not Stephen Harper's fault. Okay, here we go. Mr. Scheer's question and Justin Trudeau's response.
Of the opposition
told his caucus that any communication coming from Mr. Butts should be considered as coming from the Prime Minister himself. So once again, when did the Prime Minister become aware of the December 5th meeting between Gerald Butts and the former Attorney General?
Honourable Prime Minister.
I recognize perhaps that it's a legacy of the Harper years. The Conservatives don't seem to understand that a team that works together actually has lots of people having meetings about things that matter all the time. we continue to engage in a broad way that both protects and upholds jobs in this country and respects the independence of our system and its judiciary. That is something that we expect from all members of Cabinet, of all my staff, and we work together to serve Canadians day in and day out.
Yeah, sure. Don't believe any of that. So hold on, I'll queue up the next one. Okay, and this, Andrew Scheer is asking if the Prime Minister has expressed support to the AG for a deferred prosecution agreement, and then we can hear Mr. Trudeau's response.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, again, that wasn't the question. This is key to this entire affair of allegations of interference in a criminal proceeding. Right. The Prime Minister, through an omnibus bill, gave the top prosecutor the option of using a deferred prosecution agreement. And she ruled in her independent manner that SNC Lavalin did not qualify. At any point in time since that decision, has the Prime Minister expressed his support for this kind of deal for SNC Lavalin? Yes or no?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite seems to be concerned about the independence of the Director of Public Prosecution Service. Well, let me speak directly to that by quoting her, who just last week confirmed that in every case, prosecutors, quote, exercise their discretion independently and free from any political or partisan considerations. Canadians can know that in this country, we continue to abide by the rule of law.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Right? Rule of law, but it means nothing if there's a two-tiered legal system. How many times have you had the government change the laws after you've broken them in order for you to maintain your business? Does that happen for you? Not for me either, right? I feel like that's unfair or something. I don't know. And having connected big companies too big to fail, and then debates like this on the House floor where you're asked simple yes or no questions like, did you support this deal? And you respond with blah, 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 rule of law, blah, 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 blah. It makes you sound like, well, the buffoon that you are, right? Hold on a second. I'll queue up the next question and non-answer. Okay, in this one, Mr. Scheer asks, why did the former AG think she needed to ask you if you were going to interfere if the decision had already been made? And we'll play I feel like we should have a wheel of law or a wheel of rule of law or something, but that's the game we'll play here, ... You've got a 50-50, okay, it's probably 60-40. It's better than 60-40. Okay, here we go.
Leave the impression with the Attorney General that there was something going on. He said, and I quote, the former Attorney General asked me if I was directing her or going to direct her to take a particular decision. And I, of course, said no. So the question remains, why did the former Attorney General think that she needed to ask that? If the decision was already made, why would she have to go and get clarification if he wasn't in fact attempting to interfere?
Yeah.
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, all Canadians who've been watching this government over the past 3.5 years know full well that we will always stand up for good jobs, we will always stand up for Canadians, and we will always do so in a way that respects and upholds our institutions, including the independence of our judiciary and the rule of law. These are principles that are at the core of what this government does. It was principles at the core of why Canadians elected us in 2015, and we have stayed true.
I was done listening to him. He keeps doing the same talking points. The jobs one is another one that keeps coming up in this one. He's got about 3, and he just keeps using those same ones. And the other Liberal MPs who have that nice fancy earpiece. Do you think Gerald Butts needs to be on site in order to access that earpiece, or could he be anywhere like a drone pilot? What do you think? I'm not sure. Whew. Difficult questions for difficult days. But there it is. Like they have agreed upon talking points. They have a plan for how they're going to approach this. And I'll show you one more, and it'll be Bernier's question. He gets a question as well, and we'll look at that. So we'll get queued up. Hold on. Okay, so next up is Maxime Bernier, and Trudeau is jeered at the end of the last question, so there's some jeering left. But let's see if he can shoehorn rule of law into the answer for this question. And the question essentially is, SNC has received $2 billion in aid since 2002. Do you recognize that crony capitalism is an unjust system that must be eradicated? Can he get rule of law into the answer for that question? We'll find out in just a minute. Here we go.
Order. The Honourable Member for Beauce.
After being lobbied by the SNC Lavalin, this government changed the criminal code and tried to cut a deal to avoid a trial. Two former SNC executive just had their corruption cases thrown out of court because of unrealistic delays. And we learned that SNC has received more than $2 billion in government aid since 2002. Will the Prime Minister recognize that crony capitalism is an unjust system that must be eradicated?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will always stand up for good jobs right across the country, including in companies like SNC Lavalin. This is something that Canadians expect of us and something we will continue to do. We will continue to recognize that government has an important role to play in making sure that Canadians can find good jobs right across the country and creating the conditions for success. We will continue to do that, Mr. Speaker, in a way that respects both our institutions and the rule of law.
Yes, and he got it in there right at the last minute. Oh, goodness me. Sorry, trying to comment in real time. Okay, a couple of other cleanup things to get to before tonight. So Jody Wilson-Raybould, there was a vote put to the House about whether or not there should be a public inquiry into this whole matter. Should there be a public inquiry? And before that vote went, Ms. Wilson-Raybould said that she doesn't think she should vote in this because she is a subject of this. She's an active participant in this. That didn't bother Prime Minister Trudeau, by the way. He voted for this. He voted to not have a public inquiry. He voted to just keep this where it was. So this is Global News reporting, quote, at Puglass, and that's Jody Wilson-Raybould, speaks in the House of Commons for the first time since SNC Lavalin scandal erupted, says she's looking forward to speaking her truth. Canada Poly, and that's right here. We'll listen to that. I want to make a statement before that. The whole her truth thing, like, we can all agree on truth, on what happened and what didn't, especially with regards to criminality. It's not a spectrum. You either broke the law or you didn't. There's no gray area. Okay, here we go.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask that the record show that I abstain from voting on that matter. The reason for my abstention is that the matter in part has to do with me personally, and I do not think that it is appropriate for me to vote on a matter that has to do with me personally. I have said that I am seeking counsel on this matter of what I can and cannot say. I understand fully that Canadians want to know the truth and want transparency. Privilege and confidentiality are not mine to waive, and I hope that I have the opportunity to speak my truth.
I just wanted to show a bit of the clapping. I wanted to note that none of the Liberals are clapping for her speaking her truth. I don't know if speaking her truth, it's such a weird, snaky way of phrasing it, right? It doesn't, her truth. Why not speaking the truth? Speaking what happened. This is what happened. This is what I experienced. And fine, that's what I experienced is valid. You're former Attorney General. Your truth. Come on. What is that? With that post? Oh, so frustrating to have that kind of language used by somebody who's supposed to be the person crafting the laws in the country, right? Like her truth. Oh, we have a measurement for truth. We have that. Come on. Okay. Cormac McSweeney is a CBC reporter, I believe, and he is reporting, he or she, he, is reporting the motion calling for the public inquiry into the SNC Lavalin affairs defeated by a vote of 159 to 133. So 133 is everybody who is not a Liberal, plus two Liberals broke ranks and voted with the opposition. And I will tell you who they are right now. Liberals defeat opposition, calls for public inquiry into SNC Lavalin as Wilson-Raybould abstains. And the information of who, well, it says two Liberals, Toronto MP Nathaniel Erskine Smith and New Brunswick MP Wayne Long joined all the opposition parties in supporting the motion. And of course, the motion was defeated, but still. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he took the opportunity to apologize to his former ministers for being too slow to denounce anonymous comments and editorial cartoons about Wilson-Raybould that some considered racist and sexist. He says the allegations need to be fully aired, but he argues that inquiries by the Federal Ethics Commissioner and the House of Commons Justice Committee are sufficient to get to the bottom of the issues. So that's a very short article talking about a very complex subject. And I just wanted to show you that only 2 Liberals broke ranks, and they don't appear to be ejected from caucus, so they can break ranks. That is possible. It is something that's within the realm of possibility. These Liberals need to defend their choices when they go back to their constituents in their home, wherever they're from. They need to defend voting to not open a public inquiry into these very serious allegations to our sitting government. This goes right to the top, the Prime Minister himself and his office. And already, at the whiff of allegations, Gerald Butts is gone, right? The chief advisor to the Prime Minister, some would say the right hemisphere to the Prime Minister, and those aren't my words, those are Tom McClair's words. So that's an incredible loss for just the whiff of how big this is. This is jail time for somebody if criminality is pursued, and who knows, right? Maybe it takes 10 years to get a hearing, and then, mistrial. Sorry. Couldn't get the courts together in time, right? Shucks. So, too big to be criminals in Canada because of all those jobs they provide. We can't possibly hold those criminals to account. And if you try, you get shuffled out of your cabinet post and maligned in the press and whisper campaigns, and who knows, wait 2 hours in order to address former colleagues about why you felt it necessary to quit, right? And you had to get the Prime Minister's permission to do that. Pretty incredible. So I still think there's power plays happening behind the scenes. I still think that there's lots more to see. This is just the beginning of this. Once her side of the story becomes public, because the only thing she's said really publicly is, I can't comment on this and my lawyers haven't finished figuring out what I can talk about and what I can't. And so when they do, and who knows, I'm sure weighing her options, and yeah, we'll find out soon what that means. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca and have a wonderful evening. Sorry, I tried to get this video out at like 4 o'clock today, but I wanted to do a bit of extra background stuff and have the actual timestamps for question periods. So that's why it was a little later today. All right, thanks for watching. Have a great evening.